Welcome to the Global Energy Leaders Podcast, powered by R Squared Global.
Welcome to episode 8 of the Global Energy Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Ryan Ray, and it's so good to have you. Last week, if you missed it, we had on Dr. Ulf Richter talking about energy transition in China. Fascinating stuff going on there. This week, we bring on Dr. Andrew Inkpen to talk about the global state of the oil and gas industry. We get into a lot of neat things here. We talk about the peak oil myth, what really we should be looking for in peak oil, what will the Trump administration impact be on the oil and gas industry. We also learn a little bit about the educational opportunities there are for people in the oil and gas industry or for those that are wanting to get into the oil and gas industry. And so it's a great interview. Dr. Inkpen was very gracious with his time. And before we go any further, just a few things I want to mention. I will be at the API-YP Houston chapter meeting next Thursday night. If you're not involved and you're in Houston and you're a young professional, check it out. I will link to that in the show notes. Also, my article came out this month in the RWA magazine, and so check that out. I'd love to hear your feedback, globalenergyleaders@gmail.com. And 2 weeks from now, I will be in Sacramento area, Napa area. Would love to connect with those of you in the area. I will be at the RWA Pipeline Committee meeting, and so if you're going to be there, let me know, and let's try to sit down and have a cup of coffee and just catch up. If you're not familiar with Dr. Inkpen, we'll put a full link to his bio in the show notes so you can check that out. He is the Seward Chair in Global Strategy at Thunderbird School of Global Management, Arizona State University. He's got several books out, which is important for us because we're giving one away. And so go to iTunes, give us a written review. You can't just leave the stars, but you got to actually give us a review and say it's great, it's terrible, or somewhere in between, and you will be entered to win a copy of the book, which is valued at almost $90. And he's going to talk about his courses on here. And the beauty of this giveaway is, if you're thinking you can't afford courses right now, this book actually is the basis for the courses. So for $90, you can get an insight into the courses, and all it takes is just a few clicks of a button, a few written words, and we have a review, and you are entered. So please take the time to do that for us. Without further ado, here is Dr. Inkpen. Andrew, thank you for being on the show today. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. My pleasure to join you.
You're a respected professor and author, and so what got you interested in the international oil and gas industry?
Well, here at Thunderbird, where I've been working for the past 20 years or so, we do a lot of work with companies. We do a lot of executive education work, and really right around the time I joined Thunderbird, we started working with some big oil and gas companies and have been doing that for 20 years now. So just really from teaching and talking with and working with companies and people and individuals, got interested in the industry, the business of oil and gas, and we started writing case studies and written some books, and it's been a great industry to work with.
Over the past several years, the oil and gas industry has really been under a microscope. We have a supply glut, and so what is the status of the industry right now, and what's going on, and what do you see moving forward?
Well, it's certainly at an interesting time. 2014, we started to see some prices fall and perhaps some oversupply in the market. I think the big question right now is going out 10, 20, 30 years, are we going to hit kind of a point of peak demand where oil demand really doesn't grow anymore? And there's a number of different ideas about that. My own view is that probably in the United States, Europe, Canada, the OECD countries, we are getting close to peak demand, probably within the next 10 to 15 years. The rest of the world, I think it's a way off. I think there's going to be oil demand in China and India for a long time. But certainly in the OECD countries, we're going to see some real changes in the industry. And oversupply, maybe long-term oversupply, could start to happen in the 15, 20 years out.
I love that you brought up peak oil in the proper context there, because when I was growing up, peak oil was something that was used, to say, hey, we're going to run out of oil. But now really peak oil demand is what we should be looking for. Can you kind of tell us what's wrong with the peak oil myth as it's been presented?
Well, certainly peak oil was an idea that came out of the United States some time ago, but it was this idea, of course, that we would hit a point at which we've produced 50% of the world's oil, and from here on in, we would be using up the rest of the world's oil. And of course, what's happened is technology keeps changing, and what was once non-commercial is now commercial. So, and there's no reason to doubt that will not continue in the future. Technology keeps evolving. Deep water gets deeper, and shale and unconventional gets more efficient. That said, it's not really a question anymore of the supply of oil. It's probably a question of the demand for oil, because there's a lot of oil out there, and there's a lot of new technology coming on stream, and certainly the oil companies in the U.S. continue to get more efficient. And so the real question is are we going to hit a point in time where there just isn't a demand, continuing increasing demand for oil? And of course, the implications then are there's going to be some oil assets in the world that don't get developed, and those are going to be the high-cost assets and high-cost properties. So I don't think we're there yet, but we already know that there's a number of parts of the world right now where it's just not economical to produce oil, and should that demand really flatten out, there's going to be more of them.
One of the things you hear with the supply glut is that now we can be energy independent. And being in the oil and gas sector for the past decade, I don't really see that as something practical. There's restrictions on refineries, and we don't have enough pipelines and infrastructure in place. Is this something that's actually possible, that we can become energy independent, or is it something that politicians just like to throw out and it's kind of a pipe dream?
I don't think we'll ever truly see it. The industry is just too global. I guess, as you say, there is the potential for the U.S. to produce as much energy as it consumes in a year, but that doesn't make very good business sense. I mean, if you're an East Coast refinery, why not look to the world to supply your refinery? Why would you want to be just looking to the U.S.? If you're a gas producer in the U.S., we're going to be exporting LNG from the U.S. And possibly importing it somewhere else. And I think it's really a case of energy security, which we have. Energy independence, to me, is more of it's a political term that is used to kind of convince people that we're safe. Well, we are safe. There's plenty of energy in the world, and I don't think there's any real need to even strive for energy independence, in the sense that we don't import anything from the rest of the world. Why would you want to close your borders to energy trade? It's one of the most traded goods in the world. So energy security, that's a different term, and I think that's very much where we are and have been for a while, and will remain. There's plenty of energy in the world, and I think the U.S. is in an enviable position in certainly having its own resources, but I think open borders and open trade in energy is the way to go.
Historically, when you think of international oil and gas, you think OPEC is a big player. As we see the beginning of the destabilization of OPEC, are we going to see a potential for prices to maybe rebound a little higher and shoot up, or are we kind of past that point where that's really not going to happen anymore, barring something catastrophic or unpredictable happening?
Well, certainly the last few weeks, the OPEC meetings and OPEC statements seem to have had an impact on the industry. It looks like there may be a real agreement on restricting supply and also bringing Russia into that deal. I think it could have an impact for a while, but of course, as we know, when the price of oil goes up, the U.S. producers produce more, and that could has the impact of driving the price down. And I think OPEC still has some market power. I think it's limited. And then, of course, there's the question about, will the OPEC members actually adhere to the agreements they've made? And certainly in the past, there's a record of cheating, and even OPEC acknowledges they have a very difficult time actually getting good data on what the country producers are actually producing. So I think there's going to be a short-term impact. We've already seen it, but will it really be something long-term? I doubt it. I doubt it, both for because of the U.S. producers and because of the difficulty of actually enforcing any agreement, especially with the non-OPEC countries. But it seems to be having an impact right now, and that's certainly good for the good for the price in terms of the producers.
On the last episode, we had on Dr. Ulf Richter from Tongji University, and he mentioned that China has been stockpiling oil during this downturn. How is that going to play moving forward? Are they going to try to take that oil and resell it back to the marketplace and make a profit off of it? Or are they going to use it for consumption over time, and they bought it for a cheap price, and so now they're going to capitalize on that opportunity that they took?
Well, I don't really know. I think China is an unpredictable market force, but they do have as far as I can tell, they still have an increasing demand for oil in their country, and declining reserves unless they can really develop their shale resources, which they have not been very successful at yet. So what they will do with any surplus of oil they might have, I really don't know. I doubt it would have much of an impact on world markets. That would be my opinion.
Let's come back stateside for just a second. President-elect Trump has said that he's going to open federal lands and really help the oil and gas economy and maybe bring jobs back to that industry. But I really don't see how that's possible right now. We don't really need more drilling in the States or anywhere for that matter. We actually need the stabilization of the price. And so more barrels on the market would be a bad thing. Is there anything that he can actually do for the oil and gas industry?
Well, I'm not sure he can do huge amounts. There have been some regulatory, I guess, increased regulatory restrictions on some aspects of the industry. Certainly, there's some things going on in Alaska right now. Although that's not the federal government. So, can he influence what happens in Alaska? I doubt it. Can he influence what happens on private land? Not really. The EPA is probably going to do some things differently going forward, although I doubt that will have a huge impact on what happens on private land. On federal lands, well, there could be some changes. There could be, the access could be easier, but as you say, it's not like we have a shortage of opportunities in the U.S. on private land. So I don't really think a whole lot is going to change. The Obama administration, aside from their actions on pipelines, didn't really play much of a role in impeding or getting in the way of the oil and gas business. I think the Trump administration will take a different view of some of these highly public pipeline issues. But again, they are actually on the margins in terms of their overall impact. They're very public, and they're very politicized, but they don't really have a huge impact they're too small to have a huge impact on the industry.
We'll get back to Dr. Andrew Inkpen after we hear from our sponsor.
For over 20 years, R Squared Global has served the energy and infrastructure industries. With offices in Texas, Alabama, and Louisiana, R Squared Global offers engineering, survey, right-of-way, and GIS solutions. For more information, please visit www.gor2.com.
One thing you mentioned there was the EPA. Do you think the Trump administration will be able to change the EPA stance on allowing new refineries to be built? Or is that litigation so tied up that, in 4 years we really can't see much getting done? Because, as you mentioned earlier, trading internationally, it would seem to be beneficial to build more refineries so that we could process this oil that we have or different types of oil that may be available on the market.
Sure. I think that certainly for trading purposes, for U.S. consumption, I don't think we really need new refineries. More efficient refineries, or certainly upgrades, expansions. And that's what we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years. We've added refinery capacity, but it's been expansion capacity. It hasn't been greenfield. And I doubt we're going to see anything in greenfield in the U.S. I doubt that any of the major companies really want to do that. There will be some expansions. Certainly there'll be some inefficient refineries closed down. But I don't really see much appetite for greenfield investments. Refineries are incredibly expensive. As you say, the regulatory burdens, the permitting process is overwhelming. So more than likely, we'll continue to see upgrades, expansions, debottlenecking, stuff like that. But I don't think we're going to see any greenfield refineries.
Okay, so let's transition to your book here, The Global Oil and Gas Industry, Management, Strategy, and Finance. We're going to give away a copy to one listener. So walk us through what's in the book and what could someone expect if they were to pick up a copy.
We wrote that book because we looked at what was available in the book market on the oil and gas business, and what we discovered is there's many books, technical books, lots of technical books, lots of books on with titles like a non-technical guide to refining or a non-technical guide to, petrochemicals. There weren't very many books on the business of oil and gas. So this is a book about the business of oil and gas. It's organized around the value chain. So we walk people through the business aspects of the upstream, midstream, downstream. We describe crude markets. We describe some of the geopolitical issues, but all from a business perspective. And so it's really intended for people who are probably technical people already, but want to become more knowledgeable about business management and how the industry actually operates.
Sounds great. And for the listeners, stay tuned after the interview and you can find out how to win the copy. And you also have a book coming out in the spring. Can you tell us what's going to be in that book?
That's correct. We've over the years, we've written many case studies here at Thunderbird on the oil and gas business. So we decided we would take those case studies and actually package them into a single book. And, we call it kind of case studies and stories from the field. So we've got a diverse set of case studies from around the world that describe some of the things going on in the oil and gas business.
And if I'm correct, you can find those case studies at the Harvard Business Review.
Well, they're case studies that are the ones in the book are ones that we have used in the classroom, and so they're really written to help in our teaching. But we've kind of revised them a bit to make them more like descriptions and stories about the oil and gas business.
Okay, great. And as we already have discussed, you are a professor at the Thunderbird School. Can you tell us what you do there? You work with oil and gas companies and students and training programs. What all do you offer?
Okay. Well, we do. I mean, what we do here is we do a number of degree programs, master's programs, and we do a variety of what we call non-degree programs. So we do executive education, we do leadership training, industry training for people in the oil and gas industry and a variety of other industries. We don't just work with the oil and gas business. We work with a lot of different industries. We have our main campuses here in the Phoenix area, but we also have branch campuses in Geneva, in Moscow, and we're starting up a new facility in Dubai and possibly also in Shanghai. And in the oil and gas space in particular, as I said, we do a number of company programs. We do some open enrollment where anybody can sign up. And we also have an online oil and gas course that it's actually based on our 2011 book, and it's a self-study 12-module. You do it online. When you complete it, we give you a certificate in oil and gas management, and it just takes the student through the value chain of the oil and gas business. So self-study. Got some quizzes and some tests in each module. A lot of video, a lot of examples, a lot of real examples. So it's a good way to get a feel for how the overall industry works.
Okay, and so we'll link to all that, guys, in the show notes so you can find out how to enroll in these classes and where you can find out more information about them. So check that out. I think you have one more book that you mentioned that's coming out besides the one this spring. What can we look for in that book?
Well, we're working on a new book. Just early days right now. We're going to write a book around the strategy of the oil and gas industry with a focus on companies and really how they make strategic decisions, how do they decide what markets to go in, what particular market sectors to compete in, what countries to go in, and questions like that. So still early. Maybe 2018 we'll have that book ready.
Okay, so we'll be looking for your book in the spring. I'm going to pick up a copy and read it, and we will maybe do another promo and have you on again after this comes out in the springtime, and so we'll be watching for that. Thanks again for coming on, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks very much.
Thanks again to Dr. Inkpen for coming on. We're going to link to his bio and his classes and all that he's got going on in the show notes, so check that out. Also, one more time, review in iTunes for your chance to win the book we talked about, valued at, like I said, it's like $88 and some change. It's almost $90. You can win it for free. One final note, the API Houston chapter Young Professionals meeting next Thursday night. I will link to that in the show notes. Look to see you there. If you got any questions, email me. I can get you in contact with the people who have set it up, or you can find the information on the website yourself. Hope to see you there, and until next time, keep climbing.
Thanks for listening to the Global Energy Leaders Podcast, powered by R Squared Global.